Jake Morrison had always dreamed of making first contact, but he never imagined it would happen like this. The sleek transport vessel hummed beneath his feet as he approached the newly established Veltaran embassy, a crystalline structure that seemed to grow from the mountainside like some impossible flower. His credentials as both a linguist and xenobiologist had earned him this unprecedented opportunity to serve as Earth's first cultural liaison with an alien species. "Remember, Mr. Morrison," Director Walsh had said during his final briefing, "you're not just representing yourself. You're representing all of humanity." The weight of those words pressed against his chest as the transport doors hissed open. The embassy's interior took his breath away. Curved walls pulsed with a soft bioluminescent glow, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly quality. But it was the figure waiting in the central chamber that truly stunned him into silence. She stood with perfect posture, her skin a deep azure that seemed to capture and reflect the ambient light. Her hair was the most striking feature, vibrant, red curls that cascaded over her shoulders like liquid fire against the blue canvas of her skin. When she turned to face him, Jake felt his heart skip. Her eyes were large and expressive, a deep violet that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. "Welcome, Jake Morrison," she said, her voice carrying a melodic quality that made his name sound like music. "I am Kira Veltar, and I will be your partner during your stay." The word partner hung in the air with implications Jake didn't fully understand. He extended his hand in greeting, and when she took it, he felt a jolt of electricity that had nothing to do with static charge. Her skin was warm, softer than he'd expected, and she held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary. "The honor is mine," Jake managed, his voice barely steady. Kira led him through corridors that seemed to shift and change as they walked, the walls responding to their presence with gentle waves of color. She explained the basic functions of the embassy, but Jake found himself more focused on the graceful way she moved, the subtle scent of something like jasmine and ozone that seemed to surround her. "Your quarters are adjacent to mine," Kira said as they stopped before a doorway that materialized at their approach. "Our species believes in close proximity for optimal cultural exchange." Inside, the room was a perfect blend of human and Veltaran aesthetics. The bed was larger than necessary, covered in fabrics that seemed to flow like water. Jake set down his single bag, acutely aware of Kira's presence behind him. "There is one more thing," Kira said, her voice taking on a formal tone. "Among my people, cultural liaisons undergo a bonding ceremony. It helps us understand each other more deeply." Before Jake could ask what that meant, she stepped closer. Her hand found his chest and he felt warmth spreading from her touch. Her violet eyes met his, and suddenly the space between them seemed to crackle with tension. "Is this traditional?" Jake asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Very," Kira replied, but something flickered in her expression. Uncertainty, perhaps even fear. The ceremony was unlike anything Jake had experienced. Kira's hands traced patterns on his skin that seemed to burn with pleasant fire, and when she pressed her forehead against his, he felt a connection form between them that went beyond the physical. It was as if their minds touched, sharing fragments of memory and emotion. Hours passed in a blur of sensation and discovery. When it was over, they lay together on the flowing fabrics, Jake's human anatomy complementing Kira's alien form in ways that felt both foreign and perfectly natural. As the embassy's lights dimmed to simulate night, Jake felt a contentment he'd never known. But as sleep began to claim him, Kira's body tensed beside him. She leaned close, her breath warm against his ear, and whispered words that sent ice through his veins. "You're not safe here." Jake's eyes snapped open, but before he could respond, the lights flickered. Outside their window, something moved in the darkness, a shadow that was too large, too fluid to be human. As it passed, Jake caught a glimpse of multiple eyes reflecting the embassy's glow. That's when the terrible truth began to dawn on him. He hadn't been chosen for his qualifications. He hadn't been chosen for diplomacy. He'd been chosen for something else entirely. The shadow moved again, and this time Jake saw it clearly. A creature that was definitely not human, watching their window with predatory interest. Kira's hand found his in the darkness, and he felt her trembling. He wasn't a liaison. He was trapped. Jake woke to find Kira's violet eyes studying his face with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. The events of the previous night felt like a fever dream, but the warmth of her blue skin against his confirmed everything had been real. "You're wondering if you imagined it," Kira said softly, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "The shadows. The warning. You didn't." In the gentle morning light filtering through the crystalline walls, she looked ethereal. Her red curls caught the illumination like flames, and Jake found himself mesmerized by the contrast against her azure skin. When she leaned down to kiss him, he forgot about everything else. Their lips met with a tenderness that quickly deepened into passion. Kira's alien anatomy was both familiar and wonderfully different. Her skin seemed to respond to his touch with subtle changes in color and temperature. When his hands explored the curves of her body, she made sounds that were musical, almost like singing. "My people," she whispered between kisses, "we don't bond lightly. What happened between us last night, it changes everything." Jake pulled back to look at her. "What do you mean?" Kira's expression grew serious. "Among the Veltaran, there are seasons. Times when we must reproduce. It comes only once every 7 of your years, and when it does, we require compatible partners." Her hand pressed against his chest. "You were chosen because your genetic markers aligned perfectly with mine." The implications hit Jake like cold water. "So this was all planned? The selection, the bonding?" "Yes and no," Kira interrupted, her voice urgent. "They chose you for me, but what I feel—" She kissed him again, desperate and hungry. "This is real, Jake. What's between us transcends their purposes." As if to prove her point, she moved against him with a fluid grace that made his breath catch. Her body seemed to glow faintly as their passion intensified, and Jake realized that for Veltarans, physical intimacy was literally illuminating. They made love with an intensity that felt both alien and completely natural. Afterward, as they lay entwined, Kira explained more. "The embassy isn't what your people think it is. It's a research facility. They've been studying human reproduction, looking for ways to create hybrid offspring." Jake's blood chilled. "How many others?" 12 humans were brought here initially. You're the third I've been paired with. What happened to the others?" Kira's silence was answer enough. That afternoon, as Jake explored more of the embassy, under the pretense of cultural observation, he began to notice things. Surveillance nodes disguised as decorative elements, corridors that led to sections clearly off-limits to him. And the other embassy staff, both human and Veltaran, watched him with expressions he was beginning to recognize as clinical interest. Dr. Patricia Vance, the embassy's human medical officer, seemed friendly enough, but when Jake mentioned feeling monitored, her smile became strained. "It's natural to feel observed in a new environment," she said. "The Veltarans are just thorough in their documentation." That evening, Jake found Kira in their shared quarters, her blue skin pale with worry. "They're accelerating the timeline," she said without preamble. "My cycle is beginning." Jake could see it was true. Her skin held a luminescent quality it hadn't possessed before, and her red hair seemed to move with a life of its own. When she approached him, he could feel heat radiating from her body. "I need you," she whispered, her voice thick with desire and desperation. "But if we complete the bonding during my fertile cycle, there could be a child," Jake finished. "A hybrid, the first of its kind. That's what they want." Her hands shook as she reached for him. "But I want it too. I want it with you." Their lovemaking that night was different, more intense, more primal. Kira's alien nature became more pronounced, her skin shifting through shades of blue and purple as waves of pleasure coursed through her. Jake found himself responding to her changes, his own body seeming to adapt to match her alien rhythms. But even in their passion, Jake couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. When he glimpsed movement in the corridor outside their quarters, His blood ran cold. Figures in the shadows, observing, recording. "Kira," he whispered urgently. She followed his gaze and stiffened. "They're documenting everything. The bonding process, our compatibility, the potential conception." Her voice broke. "You're not just my partner, Jake. You're their experiment." As the shadow figures moved away, Jake realized with growing horror that he wasn't the first human to be chosen, and if he didn't find a way out soon, he might not be the last. The next morning brought a desperation to their lovemaking that Jake had never experienced. Kira's fertile cycle was reaching its peak, her blue skin practically glowing with an inner fire. Her red curls seemed to move independently, reaching for him as she pulled him close. "If this is to be our last time," she whispered against his lips, "let it be perfect." Their bodies moved together with an urgency born of love and fear. Jake marveled at how Kira's alien physiology responded to him, her skin shifting through brilliant hues of sapphire and turquoise as pleasure built between them. When she cried out his name, it sounded like a song of pure joy that made the crystalline walls resonate in harmony. But their blissful moment shattered when Kira suddenly tensed, her eyes wide with terror. "What is it?" Jake asked. "Listen," she whispered. In the distance, Jake could hear it, screaming, human screaming. Kira's face went pale. "They're harvesting genetic material from the others, the unsuccessful pairings. They're being discarded." Jake felt sick. "We have to help them." "First, you need to know everything." Kira's voice trembled as she began to dress. "My people aren't here for diplomacy." "We're dying, Jake. Our species has been in decline for centuries. We discovered that human genetic material could revitalize our bloodline, but only through natural conception with compatible individuals." She led him through a hidden passage behind their quarters, her alien abilities allowing her to manipulate the embassy's bioresponsive systems. They moved through sections Jake had never seen, laboratories filled with floating tanks containing genetic samples, medical bays with restraints clearly designed for human subjects. "How many facilities like this are there?" Jake asked. 17. Across your planet. Hundreds of humans have been taken. Kira's grief was palpable. "I was assigned to seduce you, to make you compliant. But what I feel for you is real." They reached a viewing chamber overlooking a vast underground complex. Jake's blood ran cold at what he saw. Dozens of humans in various states of confinement. Some were clearly willing participants, living in comfortable quarters with their Veltaran partners. Others were restrained, being subjected to medical procedures. "Dr. Vance," Jake breathed, spotting the familiar figure. "She's one of them." "A hybrid," Kira confirmed. "First generation. She helps identify compatible humans for the program." As they watched, Dr. Vance approached a holding cell containing a man Jake recognized, David Chen, another supposed cultural liaison who had disappeared weeks earlier. The man looked broken, defeated. "We have to get him out," Jake said. "And go where?" Kira's voice was bitter. "Your government knows about this program. They've been complicit from the beginning." The betrayal hit Jake like a physical blow. "What?" "Selected humans in exchange for technology. A trade agreement written in blood and genetic material." Kira's hand found his. "But there are some among my people who oppose this, who believe there must be a better way." They made their way deeper into the facility, Kira using her biosignature to access restricted areas. In a central data core, she began downloading files onto a device that looked like crystallized light. "Evidence," she explained. "Proof of what's being done here. If we can get this to the right people on both our worlds." An alarm began blaring. Through the transparent walls, Jake could see security forces mobilizing, both human and Veltaran. "They know we're here," Kira said, her skin flashing warning colors. Dr. Vance's voice echoed through the facility's communication system. "Kira Veltar, you are in violation of protocol. Return to your quarters immediately." She was never our ally, Jake realized. Kira grabbed his hand, her skin burning hot with emotion. "Whatever happens, know that I love you. Not as part of their program, not as a mission, but truly. Jake pulled her close, kissing her fiercely. Then let's make sure we both survive to build something better. They ran through corridors that seemed to shift and change around them, the embassy's bio-responsive architecture working against them now. Behind them, pursuit grew closer, the sound of running feet and alien communication devices. At a junction, Kira suddenly stopped. There's something you need to know, about the bonding we shared, about what it means for your species. Tell me later, Jake urged, pulling her forward. No, now, because if we're caught. Kira's violet eyes met his. The bonding process doesn't just create compatibility between individuals. It awakens dormant genetics in humans. You're changing, Jake, evolving. As if to prove her point, Jake suddenly felt his senses sharpen. He could hear heartbeats, smell fear pheromones, see heat signatures through walls. The embassy's alien technology no longer felt foreign. It felt responsive to his will. What's happening to me? You're becoming something new, human and Velterran traits combined. Kira's smile was sad and proud simultaneously. Our child wouldn't just be a hybrid. It would be the first of a new species entirely. Behind them, Dr. Vance appeared with a team of security personnel. Her human features were distorted by alien modifications, making her look like a grotesque fusion of both species. End of the line, she called out. Kira, you've contaminated the subject. He'll need to be reconditioned. Kira stepped protectively in front of Jake. Never. The standoff lasted only seconds before everything erupted into chaos. Kira's skin erupted in brilliant patterns of bioluminescence as her defensive capabilities activated. Jake watched in awe as his lover transformed before his eyes, her gentle demeanor replaced by something fierce and protective. Energy crackled between her fingers as she faced Dr. Vance and the security team. Jake, the communication array is 3 levels up, Kira said without taking her eyes off their pursuers. If we can send a message to my people's resistance movement, we're going together, Jake insisted, feeling the strange new strength flowing through his enhanced body. Dr. Vance laughed, the sound disturbing coming from her hybrid features. You think you can escape? This facility exists in 13 dimensions simultaneously. Even if you reach the surface, where will you go? Kira's response was to release a pulse of energy that sent the security team scrambling for cover. She grabbed Jake's hand, her skin burning hot with exertion. Run! They sprinted through corridors that seemed to bend reality around them. Jake's enhanced senses allowed him to anticipate the building's shifts, guiding them through passages that folded, space. Behind them, pursuit grew more organized as reinforcements joined the hunt. In here, Kira gasped, pulling him into what appeared to be a maintenance shaft. The confined space pressed them together, and despite the danger, Jake felt a surge of desire for this incredible woman who had risked everything for him. Her breathing was labored, her blue skin glistening with perspiration, and when she looked at him with those violet eyes, the world seemed to disappear. Kira, he whispered, cupping her face in his hands. I know, she breathed, leaning into his touch. Even now, even here, I want you. Their kiss was desperate, fueled by adrenaline and the possibility that they might not survive the next hour. When Jake's hands traced the curves of her body, Kira responded with soft sounds of pleasure that made his enhanced hearing tingle. Promise me, she whispered against his lips, that if we don't make it out, you'll know that choosing to love you was the best decision of my life. We're making it out, Jake said fiercely. Both of us. They emerged from the shaft into a vast chamber filled with the embassy's central processing cores. The air hummed with alien technology, and Jake could feel his transformed senses interpreting data streams that would have been incomprehensible to him before. The communication array, Kira pointed to a crystalline structure at the chamber's center. If we can access it, we can broadcast the evidence to both our worlds simultaneously. But as they approached, more security forces poured into the chamber from multiple entrances. They were surrounded, and Jake could see the grim satisfaction in Dr. Vance's modified features. Did you really think we weren't monitoring your biosignatures? She taunted, Every heartbeat, every hormone spike, every moment of intimacy has been recorded and analyzed. Kira's skin flared with angry colors. You disgust me. Both species deserve better than what you've become. I've become evolution, Dr. Vance replied. The bridge between worlds. What you're trying to preserve is weakness, messy emotions, and outdated concepts like love. Jake felt something building inside him, a resonance with the embassy's technology that shouldn't have been possible. Kira, I think I can interface with their systems. Impossible, you're human. Not anymore, Jake said, placing his hand on the nearest control surface. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Jake's consciousness expanded, touching every system in the facility. He could see the imprisoned humans, feel their terror and despair. He could sense the Velteron researchers, some conflicted about their work, others coldly clinical. And he could feel the vast network connecting this facility to others across Earth. Through the connection, he began broadcasting, not just the evidence Kira had gathered, but his own experiences, his emotions, the truth about what love between species could create rather than destroy. Stop him! Dr. Vance screamed, but Kira was already moving, her alien abilities creating barriers of energy around Jake as he worked. Security forces fired weapons that sent crackling bolts of energy through the air, but Kira deflected them with graceful movements that turned defense into deadly art. Jake felt the message spreading to resistance cells among the Veltaran, to human governments who hadn't known the full extent of the program, to media outlets across both worlds. The truth was spreading faster than it could be contained, but the effort was draining him. Blood ran from his nose as the alien technology pushed his enhanced but still partially human brain to its limits. Jake! Kira cried out as she saw him collapsing. In that moment of distraction, Dr. Vance struck. An energy weapon caught Kira in the chest, sending her sprawling. Her beautiful blue skin went pale as she struggled to breathe. No. Jake's anguish sent a feedback pulse through the entire facility's systems. The bonding process is remarkable, Dr. Vance observed clinically, as Jake crawled toward Kira's fallen form. Your emotional connection actually amplifies your technological interface capabilities. We'll need to study this phenomenon extensively. Jake gathered Kira in his arms, her red curls spilling across his lap. Her violet eyes were dimming, and he could feel their bond stretching as her life force weakened. Did the message get through? She whispered. Yes, Jake said, tears streaming down his face. The whole galaxy knows now. Kira smiled weakly. Then it was worth it. As security forces closed in around them, Jake held the woman he loved and prepared for whatever came next. But in the distance, he could hear something that made his heart caught the sound of explosions, of battle, of rescue forces fighting their way into the facility. His message had been received. Jake woke in a sterile medical facility, his body aching from the technological interface that had nearly killed him. But the pain was nothing compared to the emptiness he felt where his bond with Kira had been. The last thing he remembered was holding her bleeding form as security forces surrounded them. She's alive, a familiar voice said. Jake turned to see Director Walsh, but the man looked haggard, older than when Jake had last seen him. Where is she? In isolation. Both of you have been unconscious for 3 days while we sorted out this. Yes. Walsh sat heavily in a chair beside Jake's bed. Your broadcast, it changed everything. Governments are falling, treaties are being rewritten, and half the galaxy is in uproar. I don't care about politics, Jake said flatly. I want to see Kira. That's complicated. There are those who want her tried for treason against her own species. Others who want her dissected to understand how the bonding process works. Walsh's expression was grim. And there are humans who want you studied for the same reasons. Jake felt the enhanced senses that Kira's love had awakened in him. He could hear heartbeats throughout the facility, smell the fear and uncertainty of the staff. The facility's electronic systems hummed at the edges of his consciousness, waiting for his command. Where is she? He asked again, his voice carrying an undertone that made Walsh flinch. Before Walsh could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Through the walls, Jake could sense familiar biosignatures, Vel-Terran, but not hostile. The resistance, forces Kira had mentioned. The facility shook as energy weapons discharged outside. Jake stood, his enhanced body moving with fluid grace despite his recent ordeal. The electronic lock on his door yielded to his newfound abilities with barely a thought. "Jake, wait!" Walsh called. But Jake was already moving. He found Kira 3 floors down, behind reinforced barriers that were designed to contain even Vel-Terran energy manipulation. She was unconscious, her blue skin pale and her glorious red curls limp. Medical equipment monitored her vital signs, and Jake could see she was healing, but slowly. "The bonding process," he murmured, understanding flooding through him. "She's dying because we're separated." The barriers fell before his enhanced abilities, and the moment Jake touched Kira's hand, color flooded back into her skin. Her violet eyes opened, finding his immediately. "Jake," she whispered, her voice like music after silence. "I'm here," he said, gathering her into his arms. "I'm not leaving you again." Their reunion was interrupted by the arrival of both human and Vel-Terran forces. But these weren't the researchers and security personnel from the embassy. These were diplomats, peacekeepers, and, most importantly, members of the Vel-Terran resistance. Commander Thane Velmore, a tall Vel-Terran with silver skin and crystalline hair, stepped forward. "Kira Veltar, you have been pardoned by the resistance. Council, your actions have exposed a cancer that was destroying both our species." A human general Jake didn't recognize addressed him. "Mr. Morrison, your government owes you an apology. We were told this was a voluntary breeding program with willing participants. We had no idea about the coercion and imprisonment." "The program is being shut down," Commander Thane added. "All facilities are being converted to genuine diplomatic and cultural exchange centers. Those who wish to pursue bonding between our species may do so freely, without coercion." But Jake barely heard them. Kira was in his arms, her skin warm and glowing with health again. When she looked at him, he saw a future that transcended the boundaries between worlds. "There's something I need to tell you," Kira said softly. "The bonding, the changes in your physiology, and they're permanent. You can never be fully human again." Jake smiled, brushing a curl of red hair from her face. "And you chose to defy your entire species for me. I think we're even." Their kiss was gentle this time, full of promise rather than desperation. Around them, the representatives of 2 worlds began the delicate process of building a new relationship based on truth and mutual respect, rather than deception and exploitation. 6 months later, Jake and Kira stood together in the garden of their new home, a place that was neither fully human nor Vel-Terran, but something entirely new. The house itself was a marvel of bio-responsive architecture that adapted to their needs and moods. Kira's hand rested on her slightly rounded belly, where their child grew, the first natural hybrid conceived in love rather than laboratory manipulation. Her blue skin glowed with the soft radiance of pregnancy, and her red curls seemed to dance in the alien breeze. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, watching Earth's sun set alongside the artificial star that provided the wavelengths her physiology required. Jake wrapped his arms around her from behind, feeling their child stir at his touch. "Regret falling in love with the most incredible woman in 2 galaxies? Never. Even though I'm not human? Especially because you're not human," Jake said, turning her in his arms. "You've shown me that love doesn't recognize species barriers. Our child will be proof that different doesn't mean incompatible, it means evolution." Their kiss was interrupted by a communication from the new Interspecies Council, where they both served as cultural advisors. More couples were requesting bonding ceremonies, and there was talk of establishing a colony world where human Vel-Terran families could thrive. As they walked hand in hand into their home, Jake reflected on how much had changed. The breeding program's exposure had toppled governments and forced both species to confront their prejudices. But from that chaos had emerged something beautiful, proof that love could indeed transcend any boundary, even the vast distances between stars. In the nursery they were preparing, Holographic images showed other couples like them across the galaxy. Humans and Velterans who had chosen love over fear, cooperation over exploitation. Their child would grow up in a universe where being different was celebrated rather than feared. "I love you," Kira whispered as they lay together that night, her bioluminescent skin creating patterns of light across their bedroom walls. "I love you too," Jake replied, feeling their child respond to the warmth of their bond. "All of you." Outside their window, the stars shone down on a galaxy that was learning, slowly but surely, that love was the greatest force in the universe, capable of bridging any gap, healing any wound, and creating possibilities that neither species could have imagined alone.